Oh my gouache! Today we are painting with gouache. And yes, I'm sorry, that was terrible, but I'm not sorry. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today we are trying out my new gouache paints and we are using this new palette here which I bought specifically for my gouache paints. And yeah, we're just going to test them out, do some little paintings and have some fun. So what are gouache paints? Basically they are very similar to watercolor, however they are thicker and they're sort of more opaque than watercolor. The good thing about gouache paints is that you can paint them thinly with a lot of water as if they were a watercolor, but you can also paint them really thickly and basically you can use them like acrylics as well because they are quite opaque. And yeah, I thought it would be interesting to try them out because I've never actually used gouache paints before other than the little bit of white gouache here and there in a painting for highlights. But yeah, this time I'm actually doing a painting mainly with gouache, so yeah. Now I thought that in this video I would actually do a few different ones just to test it out. So yeah, the first painting I'm doing here is a little bit of a plant sort of naturey piece. Well, not exactly naturey because I'm painting basically a brick wall. And yeah, I started off with a nice flat color of very diluted paints, and I just got a sort of nice sort of beigey yellow color. Now this is mainly for the parts in between the bricks, and then after I made sure that was completely dry, I used my flat brush to just sort of paint in some nice strokes in a brick pattern. Now this is actually a pretty good and easy way to paint in bricks, and I had a lot of fun actually doing this. After I got that done and let it dry completely, I went in with some thicker gouache paint in a sort of creamy sort of color. I used a bit of white mixed with yellow ochre, and I basically just painted in some horizontal lines which I was going to turn into shelves on this brick wall. After that I got some nice brown colors and painted in some little squares on those shelves, and these are basically going to be little plant pots for all the plants to be in. After that I sort of just added some little highlights and shadows to them, and I probably should have chosen a different color for the plants or the plant pots or a different color for the bricks because I didn't realize that they are very similar in color. However, the main focus is supposed to be the plants and all that greenery, so I'm not too upset by that. For the plants themselves, I actually went in with an emerald green, which is the darker of the two greens that I have, because with these paints, since they're opaque, you can actually paint from dark to light, so I definitely wanted to test that out. So I added in a nice very dark green color, the emerald green, for all of the plants, and then after that I went in with the leaf green, which is the sort of lighter green color, and then painted in those highlights. And that was actually a lot of fun because with watercolor you sort of have to be very careful to preserve those highlights. However, with gouache paints it's very easy just to add nice bright highlights over the top of the dark colors. So yeah, I had a lot of fun doing that. After that I mixed some nice pinks and purples and white colours and added some little flowers to all of the plants just to spice things up, add a bit more pop of colour and some nice brightness into the painting, and that was basically most of it. So here is the final results of the first little painting I'm doing with gouache, and this is actually the first painting I've ever made with gouache paints, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So for this next illustration I wanted to do a bit of a landscape, basically some trees and some grass and the sky, you know, cute shit like that. So I'm actually starting off with a nice flat sort of wash for the sky. Now I noticed with these paints the dark colours sort of dry lighter and the light colours sort of dry darker, so I had to make sure to add lots of paint to make this sky nice, because when I first added the paint it was lighter than I expected. So yeah, I just started off with a nice blue, and then I added a bit of white to it to add sort of the start of some clouds. And then after all that was dry, I added in some yellow for the grass. Now I decided on yellow for the grass because I was going to add some bits of orange and also green over the top of that, just to give it a nice bit of variation, to make it look like the grass is very dry and sort of dying a little bit, mainly because I wanted this to be a bit of a summery feel. And yeah, after that I added some nice bits of white for some wispy clouds in the sky, and I added a little bit of yellow to that to add a bit of a coloured highlight. And then after that was dry, I decided to dry brush in some textures for the trees. Now basically with dry brush you just add a little bit of paint to your brush and don't even add much water at all, and then sort of wipe your brush a little bit so that there's not much paint on there. And then basically what I did was I added some little vertical strokes to the painting, and it just catches a bit of the texture of that paper and adds a nice bit of texture. After that I basically went in with some branches for these trees. Now I'm using white paint for the trees, mainly because I really like the look of those sort of white trees with the grey bits on them. I think they're birch, I'm not too sure. Anyways, I've never actually painted white trunks on a tree before. I usually go for the traditional brown colour. So I thought that this would be an interesting change, and I'm actually pretty happy that I did that because the white just adds a bit more vibrance to the piece. And yeah, after that I mixed some nice little sort of greyish browny colour, and then I just mixed that in and put like little tiny strokes over the branches just to add some nice little details here and there and make it look a little bit more interesting. After that I added some highlights to the trees as well, but mainly just getting that same green but mixing a bit of yellow in with it, just for some nice little highlights and also to cover up parts of the branches to make it look like it's underneath the leaves. And yeah, after that I added a little bit more texture to the grass just with some yellow and some green paint, just to add a sort of hint to the grass texture, but nothing too obvious. It was very subtle, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one. I think it looks pretty cute. After that I basically just added some little birds into the sky, and then some more sort of brighter highlights with some white mixed with yellow to the trees, and that was most of that artwork done. And you know what, I'm actually pretty happy with this one. It's probably one of my favorites of this video, mainly because the trees and the clouds all just have this cute little texture that I'm actually pretty happy with. So for this next illustration I wanted to go in a bit of a different direction. I didn't want to make them all the same because I really felt like the first two were a bit of a practice and a warm-up, and I really wanted to sort of paint a character because I've never really painted a character with these paints before, and you know what, I was keen to try it out. So basically I got this little sketch here of a sort of I did a little princessy sort of character, something like really Disney. It's not my best work and I'm not 100% proud of it, however it was just something for me to test out these paints. So yeah, for this character I definitely concentrated a lot on shapes for her. As you can see I have a lot of shapes that sort of point out towards the sides. I have her dress, which is very poofy, and then her hair sort of is sort of fluffy as well, and it points out towards the sides, as well as the bow on the top of her head and the bow behind her as well. And now I did this mainly because I felt like, you know, just trying to mix with shapes and see what happens. So for the start of the painting of this character, I concentrated firstly on washes of colour for the main parts of the illustration, like her dress and her hair and that kind of thing. And then after I got those down, I went in with some thicker paint and added some details. Now I mainly went in with the hair to do a little bit of blending to make some highlights and stuff like that. And then for her skin as well, I added a bit extra pink to her skin for that you know, nice cute rosy cheek look. And then after that I actually went in with some quite darker pinks, and I put in some nice little textures for her dress. Now I did this mainly because the colors were a little bit patchy, mainly because I did mix a lot of water with the first layers. So adding that pattern over the top really sort of hides that patchiness, and yeah. Now for the colors of this girl, it's pretty interesting because I tried to go with a sort of pastel look. However, the colors did dry quite darker than when I put them down, which is a little bit disappointing. However, I still like her and I think she looks pretty cute. It definitely came together once I added that sort of line art over the top. Now I did that in blue mainly because her hair and her gloves were blue, but the rest of her was quite warm colors, so I felt like the blue felt like it was a bit out of place. But once I added that blue line art over the whole drawing, it definitely brought it all in together and you know, cooled that color palette down just a tiny bit to make it look like her hair and her gloves fit. Now because I felt like I wanted to add a little bit something extra to this illustration, it was quite a bit of an afterthought. However, I'm quite happy how it turned out. I decided to paint some little floating cats beside her. Now I did that in pink and yellow, and that's mainly because I wanted to choose colors that were already in the color palette, and the cats did turn out quite derpy looking, and I'm not 100% proud of them at all. However, I think they are cute, and I definitely like how the pink cat has yellow eyes and toes, and the yellow cat has pink eyes and toes, and I think that's pretty cute. And I'm noticing now that I probably should have done a pink floating cat because it kind of reminds me a bit of Mew. However, I can't change that now, so you know what, I'm just gonna roll with it. After I added that, I definitely went in with some of that exact same coloured blue line art to go around the cats as well, and then I had some little hearts in there for good measure because this is pretty cutesy and princessy and girly, so I'm like, yep, hearts will do, and I just chucked on some hearts and that's all she wrote. So yeah, here is this illustration, and I think she's pretty cute. I'm not 100% proud of her. However, I really do like how these artworks turned out, especially since it's my first time ever using gouache, and you know what, I'm actually pretty happy with how this gouache kind of works. I know the brand Reeves is not 100% favored by artists, however for my first ever gouache set I'm pretty happy with them, so I'm probably going to be working with them again in the future. So this video is starting to draw to a close, so I'm going to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure you comment below what you think and which of these paintings was your favorite. I want to know. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye everyone!